It's been one of the most talked about Hobart buildings for decades. Everyone seems to have an opinion. Plans to knock down 10 Murray Street and develop a multi-million-dollar precinct similar to Federation Square in Melbourne are still just that, plans. After 2 years of waiting and now a Supreme Court appeal due to be heard next week, the developers say the delays are costing them millions. But they've told Fiona Breen, whatever the court result, they're sticking with their project.
I don't think that'll be a great loss to you.
It's ugly, but geez, it's worth keeping. Work that one out.
I think it should go. It's a fairly ugly building in service time.
Look at the city, there's not much going on for it at the moment, so I think we need to do a bit of catching up to the rest of the capital cities in Australia.
Not my cup of tea, but...
It's called the Milk Crate, and love it or hate it, 10 Murray Street dominates Hobart's cityscape. The 14 stories of 1960s brutalist architecture are getting close to demolition.
All of that gets demolished, and we demolish all the additions, the non-heritage additions at the back of these, which is 34 and 36 Davies Street. We demolish all of those. We fix up the rear facades.
10 Murray and the heritage-listed government printing building will make way for a $100 million development, including a 6-storey office block and open space behind Parliament House.
Well, this is 10 Murray Street here. Ultimately, we'll demolish that, but only after we've built the new building here. And then we demolish all the rear of these other buildings through here and create the new square. And we preserve the St Mary's Wall, which is the original heritage wall that goes through the site in that location.
The Health Department building on the corner of Murray and Davey stays. The St Mary's Hospital, which has been empty for 30 years, also stays. In 2009, 3 proposals were presented for public comment over 6 weeks. Former Premier David Bartlett announced Sydney-based developers, the CETA Property Group, as the winning tenderers. Their proposal was considered the most popular.
This, I believe, will become and be the start of a great renaissance of the city of Hobart.
For the then Premier, it was a fait accompli, even before the planning process had started.
It's going to happen, I guarantee it.
The CETA Group signed a conditional agreement to buy the site, offering $7.5 million, a deal that has raised eyebrows in the real estate industry. It met the reserve set by the government's Director of Lands, based on advice from the Valuer General. 2 years later, the project hasn't started. According to Treasury, the deal won't be done until there's final and clear planning approval.
We've got an economy where getting some building work going would be, I think, welcomed, and we're ready to go. And we're getting frustrated about an argument about a building, 10 Murray Street, which people are arguing is worthy of preservation. But any independent expert or independent assessment of that has deemed it to be not worth preserving.
There's been 2 different development applications, both approved by the Sullivan's Cove Planning Authority and the Tasmanian Heritage Council. They hit a hurdle when supporters of the building's preservation appealed the decision, but the Planning Appeal Tribunal ruled in the developer's favour. It's not over yet. There's now a Supreme Court challenge to contend with.
We do have a very small group who have coalesced into wanting to support the retention of 10 Murray Street, and they're using every available method to try and frustrate the process.
The people behind the delays are a group known as Save 10 Murray, with 20 key members and 450 signed up to their Facebook group.
Initially we just wanted to put our view, but as it went on we became sort of more and more convinced that it was really something that we didn't want to happen.
There's little doubt their Facebook and Twitter campaigns, art exhibitions and petition have sparked debate about 10 Murray. For the group's public face, Bryony Kidd, there's also a personal interest in 10 Murray Street.
My grandfather was part of the firm that took over the design from Dirk Bolt when he left the state, and his original design was adapted through feedback from Parliament, and it ended up being a slightly different building that was actually built, and my grandfather was certainly very strongly involved with that.
Was that a driver for you and your sister at the beginning?
Maybe initially, but really as we got involved more and more and talked to other people, we began to see how many other issues really come into this. There's the historical significance, cultural significance, and environmental concerns about, really does it make sense to just demolish buildings unnecessarily?
While they've not yet succeeded in stopping the development, the process, and more recently a Supreme Court case brought on by the group, has delayed its start. Architect Paul Johnston has worked as an expert consultant for the group. He believes too many examples of 20th century architecture are being demolished around Australia.
If we have a look at the city as a whole, we'll realise that that building is exemplary as a tall building, and if we're willing to accept tall buildings in Hobart, as we have done since the 1960s, then we need to realise what our best examples are.
He says 10 Murray was one of 60 buildings nominated by the Tasmania branch of the Institute of Architects to the Register of the National Estate. It was also nominated to the Tasmanian Heritage Council.
The building was nominated in 2002, and yet today we still don't have an assessment.
It is listed on the Sullivan's Cove Heritage Schedule as a place of cultural significance. That same organisation approved its demolition. It's that organisation's role that is part of the Supreme Court case next week.
There are two legal grounds, and they're both to do with the process and whether the tribunal did their job correctly, basically, in determining whether the two different buildings could be demolished.
Next week's hearing is considered to be a last-ditch effort to save 10 Murray. It's stretching the group's resources to the limit.
And it's been very expensive to put together a Supreme Court challenge. We've had to raise quite a lot of money. We haven't quite raised all of the money, but one of our members of the group has sort of underwritten the shortfall.
The developers say the Supreme Court action alone is costing them many hundreds of thousands of dollars. The delays to construction, millions.
It's unprecedented. I think we're in very dangerous waters. It's disappointing that people can't accept the process as being a fair and reasonable process, that they want to contest it to the next level.
The government is keen to lease the new 5-star offices for an undisclosed price and move 700 public servants and politicians working in 10 Murray. But they're still toiling away in their rather dated but functional offices, and they're likely to for some time. Next week we may be a little closer to a result, but the debate is likely to continue.